Hey friends, tonight we're stepping into the strange heart of courtship in the medieval world, around the year 1350, a time when romance moved at the speed of muddy roads and market days. There were no profiles, no swipes, no instant second chances, just carefully timed glances at the well, a smile across a church aisle, and the hope that gossip would work in your favour. Before we begin, if you truly enjoy these stories, hitting like and subscribe helps me keep making them, and hopefully helps you keep drifting off. Let me know when and where you're listening from tonight. I'm always amazed by the places people tune in. Now, get comfortable, take a slow breath in, and then let it out, because once this story begins, chances are you'll be asleep before it ends. It's early morning in the Middle Ages, not the kind of early morning where you check your phone and scroll in bed. The kind where roosters act as your alarm clock, whether you ask them to or not. Your village is still wrapped in that misty half-light, the kind that makes even the mud look poetic. You can hear a distant church bell marking the hour, though in truth, most people here tell time by chores. If the baker's pulling his first loaves out of the oven, it's time to get moving. The smell of bread drifts lazily down the lane, cutting through the heavier scents of damp straw, wood smoke, and the occasional contribution from the livestock. You step outside, ducking under the low lintel of your cottage, a thatched roof overhead, a dirt path underfoot, and the knowledge that you'll probably get mud on your hem before breakfast. It's just the way things are. Your home is one of dozens here, clustered around a central green. Most belong to peasants, though the manor house looms at the edge of the settlement like a parent who's always keeping an eye on you. Its stone walls catch the first light, a subtle reminder of who owns most of the land you walk on. Life in this world is sharply divided. The nobles wake in feather beds, their mornings filled with servants, strategy, and, if the gossip is true, the occasional scandal. The peasants, well, they're busy before the sun has fully risen, feeding animals, fetching water, and trying not to spill it on the way back. If you're unmarried, mornings carry a little extra weight. Today's chores aren't just chores, they're opportunities. The walk to the well might turn into a chat with someone's eldest son. A trip to the market might end with a smile exchanged over a bundle of onions. It's courtship by chance encounter, and the chance is often carefully planned. You pull your shawl tighter against the morning chill, aware that how you look now might be the version of you someone remembers all week. That's the strange thing about dating here. Small impressions can last months. There's no instant messaging to smooth over an awkward first meeting. If you trip in front of someone today, you might still be hearing about it next Michaelmas. From the direction of the church, a group of young women passes, baskets on their hips. They glance your way, then glance again, quick, assessing looks, the medieval version of swiping left or right. You give a polite nod, neither too eager nor too aloof. There's an art to appearing interested without appearing desperate, and it's been around far longer than modern dating guides would have you believe. Behind you, a cow lows impatiently. Your neighbour is trying to coax it into the grazing field, but the animal has decided it would rather stand in the middle of the lane. This causes a brief traffic jam of carts, chickens, and one irritated goose. Everyone exchanges knowing looks. This is what passes for small talk in your village. And somewhere in that small talk, in those shared glances, seeds of courtship are planted. It's not about love at first sight so much as we both survived helping move that cow. Maybe we could survive a life together. The sun edges higher, gilding the rooftops and making the damp stones of the path glisten. You adjust your grip on the basket in your arms and start toward the marketplace. Somewhere between here and there, you might find a reason to walk a little slower, because here, the road to market isn't just for bread and onions, it's for finding the person you might marry. The marketplace of glances. The marketplace is the heartbeat of the village. If you want to see everyone, and be seen by everyone, this is where you go. It's not a sprawling bazaar with exotic spices and silks, at least not here. Instead, it's a muddy square with wooden stalls and tables draped in burlap, where the smells of fresh bread, smoked fish, and unwashed sheep mingle into something oddly comforting. You arrive just as the place is warming up. Merchants are calling out their goods, hoping their voices carry above the din. A fishmonger slaps a trout onto the counter with enough force to splash a passing child. The child squeals, the mother scolds, and somewhere behind you someone laughs. The marketplace is more than a place to trade goods. It's where you trade glances, gossip, and the occasional promise. If you're single, it's also a stage. You're not just buying onions, you're demonstrating how gracefully you can hand over coins. You're showing you have enough means to buy the finer loaf, not just the day-old one. You spot familiar faces among the crowd. There's the miller's daughter, arranging jars of honey in a way that just happens to catch the light. A young blacksmith wipes his brow with deliberate slowness, the morning sun making his arms look like they've been carved from oak. Everyone is performing, even if they pretend otherwise. Courtship here doesn't start with grand declarations. It starts with proximity. You linger at the same stall as someone you've been thinking about. You ask a question you already know the answer to, just to keep them talking. You brush hands while reaching for the same bunch of leeks, and no one pretends it's entirely accidental. The marketplace also serves as the village's rumour mill. Old women with baskets on their arms trade more than herbs. They trade stories. If you're seen speaking to someone for too long, you can be sure the news will reach every cottage by nightfall. The right kind of rumour can work in your favour. The wrong kind can make your life complicated until next harvest. You pass a stall selling ribbons, their colours vivid against the grey of the morning. The merchant catches your glance and offers one for half the usual price. You buy it without hesitation, knowing a small gift like this can speak volumes later. A ribbon can be a token, a promise, or, if given in the wrong context, a scandal. Nearby, a lute player plucks a cheerful tune, filling the air with notes that dance between the stalls. He's not here for charity, he's here to watch, to listen, to be part of the web of glances and gestures that knit the community together. In a world without photographs or written love letters for most, these shared moments are the record. As you move through the crowd, you notice how the marketplace teaches you to read people. A hand lingering on a jug means someone is debating a purchase, or waiting for an excuse to keep talking. A quick glance away can mean shyness, disinterest, or a careful game of waiting for you to make the next move. By the time you've made your rounds, your basket is heavier, but not all the weight is from bread and vegetables. You carry the weight of unspoken invitations, possible futures, and the knowledge that tomorrow morning might feel different depending on whose path you cross today. You head for the road that winds toward the manor, the ribbon tucked into your basket like a secret. Somewhere up there, the nobles play their own version of this game. You're about to see it for yourself. Noble halls and whispered games. The manor looms ahead, stone walls catching the late morning light like a stage set for a play you've never been invited to perform in. Its windows glint, its banners ripple, and the gate stands open just enough to suggest welcome, though not to everyone. Inside, the air changes, the smell of livestock and bread ovens fades, replaced by beeswax polish, rushes scattered on the floor, and the faint spice of imported cinnamon, wealth measured in cents. Here, greetings are slower, a nod from a steward, a glance from a lady in embroidered sleeves, the faintest curl of a smile from a young man whose boots could pay for your whole cottage. Every gesture has a weight, and every word is measured before it leaves the lips. Noble courtship is a performance with higher stakes than anything in the marketplace. A misplaced laugh or a clumsy compliment can close a door for years, but a perfectly timed remark, something clever without being threatening, can start rumours in the best possible way. In the great hall, sunlight filters through narrow windows, catching in the golden threads of a tapestry depicting a hunt. A stag leaps eternally, hounds in pursuit, and lords lean casually against the table as if they too are frozen in a moment meant to impress. You notice the difference in how the nobles stand. They occupy space without apology, one hand resting on a sword hilt or a jewelled belt, their posture suggesting they have never had to carry their own firewood. At one end of the room, a group of women in layered gowns exchange murmured comments as they work at embroidery hoops. Each stitch is neat, deliberate, and each glance toward the men in the room is equally deliberate. Noble romance thrives on layers of meaning. A gift is rarely just a gift. A ring might also be a challenge, a flower, a declaration, a poem, a negotiation. The hall is alive with undercurrents. A knight offers a lady a goblet of wine and their fingers brush just slightly longer than necessary. Across the room, another gentleman pointedly ignores this exchange, laughing too loudly at something else entirely. You find yourself speaking with a minor squire, someone low enough to be approachable, high enough to know the games. He explains that half the art of noble courtship is about what's unsaid. The right kind of pause can be as intoxicating as a kiss. When music begins, it's not the raucous fiddle tunes of the village square, it's a slow, courtly piece played on a lute and a small harp, each note chosen for elegance rather than energy. Dancing here is not about losing yourself, it's about displaying yourself. Two couples step forward, their movements precise and practiced, hands barely touch, eyes meet briefly, and feet glide over the rush-covered floor in carefully rehearsed steps. Outsiders, it might seem stiff. To those in the know, every shift of weight, every change in grip, every pause between turns can carry the thrill of a secret. You see a young nobleman pause mid-dance to whisper something to his partner. Her eyes widen for a moment, surprise, maybe delight, before she masks it with a calm smile. The exchange lasts seconds, but it will be discussed in corners for days. Even the architecture here seems built for secrecy. The alcoves between pillars invite quiet conversations. Tea. He long drapes at the windows hide shadowed spaces, and the gallery above allows for discreet observation without being seen. Courtship among nobles is a chess game. You're not just trying to win someone's affection, you're balancing alliances, dowries, and family reputations. Sometimes love is part of the equation. Sometimes it's just the prize you get if you happen to play well. By the time you leave the great hall, your head is buzzing, not from wine, but from the realization that every conversation you overheard could be a turning point in someone's future. Here, a single afternoon can change who marries whom, who gains land, and who suddenly finds themselves invited, or uninvited, to everything. You step back into the daylight, where the sounds of the village drift up from below. The world feels divided between the muddy marketplace and these polished floors. yet both are stages where the same human dramas unfold. Tomorrow, you'll walk both again, and maybe, just maybe, you'll know a little more about how to play each stage to your advantage. Festivals, feasts, and first moves. Festivals are where the medieval world loosens its laces. The same villagers who keep their eyes down all year suddenly look you straight in the face under the safety of song and celebration. The air smells of roasting meat, honeyed wine, and the faint tang of sweat from too many people pressed together in one square. Bunting in faded reds and yellows flaps overhead, and children weave through the crowd with sticky fingers chasing each other between the legs of dancers. If the marketplace was a place for hints, the festival is where those hints grow teeth. Dances are excuses to hold someone's hand, to spin them close enough for a breath to touch their ear. The rules of the game bend here, just enough to feel daring, but not so far that anyone can call it scandal. You're swept into a circle dance before you've even had a chance to decline. The tambourines jangle, the drum pounds like a second heartbeat, and suddenly you're gripping hands with strangers and friends alike. One turn brings you face to face with someone you've noticed all year. They don't look away this time. Food tables sag under the weight of pies, roasted birds, and wheels of cheese so large they could serve as stools if the need arose. Every bite is a kind of conversation. Accepting a slice of pie is accepting the unspoken offer of whoever baked it. A goblet handed to you can be as deliberate as a whispered proposal. Feasts often stretch into the night, with firelight painting faces gold and shadow. The ale loosens tongues, and songs loosen whatever caution still lingers. A noble might lower themselves to dance with a miller's daughter, just for the thrill of breaking rank when the stars aren't looking. But not every move is made in the open. Behind the brightly lit square, quieter spaces draw those who prefer privacy, an alcove between two houses, the back of a cart laden with hay, the shadow of the church wall where the music is muffled. Here, a conversation can tilt from innocent to intimate in the span of a single exchanged glance. Festivals are also the perfect setting for a test. You might accidentally drop something, a ribbon, a sprig of rosemary, and see who picks it up. Or you might share a cup, watching carefully to see whether they drink from your side or turned it away. These are small measures, but in a time when public touch is rare, they speak volumes. The church keeps one eye open during these celebrations, and its presence shapes the boundaries. Too much boldness can earn you a stern look from a priest, or worse, a sermon the next day thinly veiled as general guidance. So the art is in walking the line, close enough to feel the heat, far enough to keep your reputation intact. Music is the heartbeat of the night. The fiddler leans into his bow, the drummer's palms blur against stretched hide, and voices rise in harmonies that are sometimes sweet and sometimes gloriously off-key. If you can sing well, this is your moment to shine. If you can't, leaning in close to laugh at your own voice can be just as effective. And there's something about the dark, lit only by torches, that makes courage easier to find. You can lean closer under the pretense of hearing better. You can rest your hand a little longer when returning a cup. The crowd gives you cover, the music gives you rhythm, and the firelight gives you a face worth remembering. As the evening draws on, the boundaries between noble and commoner blur more than they do on any other day of the year. A knight might challenge a baker to a drinking contest. A lady might ask a farmhand to teach her a step she cannot quite remember. though you suspect she remembers perfectly well. When the last song fades and the torches burn low, the walk home can be the most telling part of the night. If someone matches your pace, if their shoulder brushes yours in the dark, it's as much a statement as any vow. And if they part from you at the crossroad with a smile instead of a word, the promise is understood. You'll see them again under the bunting when the next festival comes. Letters, tokens, and quiet courtship. Letters in the Middle Ages are less like text messages and more like treasure. Not everyone can read or write dash, so a letter carries weight. It is a sign of education, of effort, of something worth the parchment it's written on. If you're lucky enough to send one, the process is almost ceremonial. Ink is made from oak galls crushed into a rich black, mixed with iron salts and gum. A quill is trimmed to a perfect point, and each letter is drawn slowly, carefully, as if every stroke might be the only thing your intended remembers of you. Even the delivery is a gamble. There is no postman, no guaranteed service. Your letter might be carried by a travelling merchant, hidden in the folds of a friend's cloak, or entrusted to a monk who happens to be heading in the right direction. Every hand it passes through knows it's not just ink and parchment, it's a message that could change a life. For those who cannot write, tokens speak in place of words. A ribbon worn at a festival might later be found on someone's doorstep. A sprig of lavender could mean remembrance. A piece of bread baked in a special shape might carry a silent message if delivered to the right hands. These tokens are safe, and yet dangerously revealing. A flower picked from the wrong field can signal not affection, but alliance with a rival family. A handkerchief in the wrong colour might stir gossip before you even know you've given offence. Every gesture is a code, and every code is open to interpretation. Sometimes, the courtship moves in plain sight but under the cloak of ritual. If you are in the noble courts, this might mean exchanging favours before a joust. Your chosen knight wears your colours as he rides, a public declaration masked as chivalry. In the village, it might be as small as sharing your place on their bench at the alehouse, knowing everyone will notice. Tokens and letters also serve as protection against prying eyes. You can claim a gift is simply a gift, a letter simply a message about trade or weather. But the person it's meant for knows the truth in the weight of the ribbon, the curve of a certain word, the pressed sprig of rosemary tucked inside. And of course, there's the problem of keeping these tokens safe. Many are hidden in chests, wrapped in cloth, or tucked into the lining of clothing. But every hiding place carries a risk. Siblings, servants, and rivals have ways of finding what they're not meant to see. Occasionally, a letter or token is discovered by accident, or so it's claimed, and this can set the whole town buzzing. Whispers travel faster than carts. By sunset, the meaning of your ribbon or the exact words in your letter might be twisted into something unrecognizable. Still, these risks are what make the gesture powerful. When you slip a token into someone's hand, you're not only offering them a piece of yourself, you're trusting them with the knowledge that could undo you, and that trust, in an age when reputations can be broken with a glance, is as intimate as any kiss. Sometimes, the exchange never ends in marriage or even open acknowledgement. The letter might be tucked away for years, its seal unbroken. The token might remain hidden in the folds of a gown that is worn thin and mended over and over, a secret only the wearer understands. But even without a public ending, the act itself leaves a mark. A quiet thread woven into the memory of two people who once spoke without speaking. chaperones, scandals, and the art of staying out of trouble. In the Middle Ages, courtship is never a private affair. If you're a noble woman, you might as well be dating with half the castle watching from the balcony. If you're a peasant girl, it's the same story. Only replace the balcony with your aunt leaning on the fence post and 3 neighbours pretending to weed their gardens. The chaperone is your ever-present shadow. In noble courts, this might be a duenna, an older, sharp-eyed woman whose primary hobby is making sure your hands remain exactly where they should be. In a village, the role falls to your family members. Your little brother might be bribed to tag along, or your father might suddenly find he needs your help fetching water at the exact time your admirer usually strolls by. The logic is simple. Where there are young people and opportunities for romance, there are also opportunities for scandal. And scandal, in a world where reputation is currency, can cost more than gold. Chaperones aren't just passive observers, they are active deterrents. A noble chaperone might sit between you and your suitor during a feast, politely intercepting the passing of wine cups or folded notes. In the countryside, your cousin might accidentally spill ale on your lap just as someone starts to compliment your eyes. If you're clever, you learn to work within these constraints. You perfect the art of conversation in public spaces, where every word has a double meaning. You use pauses in music, the turning of a page, or the passing of a candle to slip in a glance that says more than a paragraph could. Still, there are those who test the boundaries. Young lovers might arrange to meet at dawn, under the pretense of tending animals, or they might linger after vespers, hiding in the shadow of the church wall until the chaperone calls out their name. When a scandal does break, the consequences ripple outward fast. In noble circles, it might mean broken betrothals, political fallout, or a swift relocation to a distant relative's estate for your health. Among commoners, the punishment is often social, whispers at the market, cold shoulders at the well, and fewer invitations to gatherings. There are famous cases, retold with both horror and glee. A baron's daughter caught exchanging rings with a knight not of her rank. A baker's son spotted slipping out of the reeve's barn with the reeve's daughter, both smelling faintly of hay and fresh bread. Each story becomes a cautionary tale, repeated for years as proof that no one is above the rules. And yet, there's a strange romance in the danger. The need for secrecy sharpens every interaction. The chaperone's presence turns a brush of fingers into an act of rebellion. Even the most mundane meeting can feel like a scene from a ballad when it's done under watchful eyes. In some ways, the chaperone is a performer too. Their vigilance is partly for show, a way of signalling to the community that propriety is being upheld. Behind closed doors, they might be less strict, especially if they like your suitor. A knowing smile here, a conveniently timed errand there, and suddenly you've been given a few minutes of precious privacy. Of course, not all chaperones are benevolent. Some genuinely delight in catching rule breakers, their sense of purpose tied to how many courtships they can disrupt. They will position themselves like chess pieces, blocking every route to intimacy until you are ready to give up entirely. Navigating this world means understanding the social choreography. Every glance, every step, every pause is calculated. You learn when to speak and when to let silence say everything. You learn how to move within the narrow space between propriety and scandal, and how to make that space feel vast enough to contain an entire romance. It's not an easy dance, but those who master it can keep a love alive for months, even years. without a single unchaperoned moment. The irony is that sometimes, when marriage finally comes, the couple hardly knows how to be alone together. The quiet feels strange without someone hovering in the doorway. Still, those careful, chaperoned days are remembered with a fondness that no scandal can erase. Because in the Middle Ages, love isn't just about the person, it's about the game. And the game only works when everyone is playing their part. Festivals, feasts, and the language of the dance. The air smells of roasting meat, yeast, and pine boughs. It's festival day, and for a moment even the cobblestones seem to hum with anticipation. Children dash past in wool tunics too big for them, chasing each other through the crowd. Banners ripple above, stitched with crests and saints and symbols only half the guests can identify. You're standing at the edge of the square, where music spills from the wooden platform at its centre. A trio of musicians, fiddle, drum, and a kind of bagpipe that wheezes like an old uncle, coax people toward the dance space. The steps are simple, but the real game is in the glances. A bow that lasts a fraction too long, a hand that lingers just above another's before taking it. In the medieval marketplace of romance, dance is the safest form of dangerous conversation. You've been told the first dance is for polite company, the second is for the brave, and the third, well, the third is for the people who will be whispered about all week. Your partner is a baker's daughter, cheeks still pink from the oven. Her hands smell faintly of rye flour. She meets your eye for a beat too long, and in that instant every loaf she's ever baked feels like it's for you. The steps are a weaving pattern, forward, side, turn, and pass. Your shoulders nearly brush as you trade partners with the man beside you. He nods, in that way that says he knows you're both here for reasons other than exercise. A noble woman in embroidered green sweeps past, skirts a small storm around her ankles. Her partner, a knight too young to have scars yet, glances at her hands as if trying to read a book written in silk. Every time the circle contracts, your partner's perfume of bread and hearth smoke draws closer. Every time it expands, your eyes chase hers through the moving bodies like a hunter through a forest. The musicians slip into a quicker tempo. Your partner laughs, an unguarded sound that makes the whole square feel a little warmer. You know that laugh will be remembered more than any step you take today. At the edge of the crowd, mothers stand with arms folded, assessing every hand placement. Fathers pretend not to watch, but their eyes follow every turn. Some couples stumble from nerves, others from ale, and a few from the weight of stories they'd rather not tell in public. When the song ends, applause rises like rain on a roof. You and your partner bow, but her smile is the real farewell. Not too wide, not too small, just enough to promise you'll cross paths again before the day is over. The next dance begins almost immediately. A new partner, a new set of silent negotiations. This time it's a widow in her 30s, with eyes that have clearly seen enough to ignore the rules. She steps close, too close. Your heartbeat forgets the rhythm of the drum. The gossip will have fresh material tonight. And you, well, you'll have a story you can never quite tell the same way twice. Courting customs and secret signals. Courtship in the Middle Ages is not a straight line. It's a maze, with rules no one fully writes down, and everyone claims to know. You stand at the edge of the market square, the winter sun casting light sharp enough to pick out the glint on a lady's brooch. Somewhere between the bread stall and the wool merchant, two people are conducting an entire conversation without a single word. A dropped glove here, a half curtsy there. He touches the brim of his cap not as greeting, but as a coded "I noticed you." She adjusts her veil to show one side of her face more than the other. It's an art form, part theatre, part strategy. In a world where marriages are often arranged for land or alliances, these gestures are the loopholes for genuine attraction. If a man offers a ribbon during a feast, it is not just decoration. It is a claim, a request, and a risk, all at once. If she wears it the next day, the market will hum with speculation. Some lovers write notes, folded so small they could hide inside a walnut shell. A servant might pass it under a trench table during dinner, or slip it into a basket of eggs. The handwriting is careful, the words always plausible if read aloud by the wrong person. Flowers are another language entirely. A red carnation whispers passion. A violet hints at modesty. Rosemary speaks of remembrance. But meanings change by region, and a misstep can turn a love note into an insult. Even the church door is a stage for signals. A man might linger in the narthex after Mass, pretending to tie his shoe while watching the woman he admires leave. She might pause just long enough for him to notice. Glances are as dangerous as they are thrilling. Too many in a row, and tongues will wag. Too few, and you risk being forgotten before the next feast day. At court, the game grows sharper. A nobleman might send a falconer to deliver a hooded bird. Its jess is tied with coloured thread, a token that only the intended recipient can decode. A lady might respond with an embroidered handkerchief, each stitch a word her family would forbid her to speak aloud. Sometimes, the signals take on a playful boldness. A young knight might carve a heart into the handle of his dagger, then hand it to a lady during a tournament feast. The meaning is clear to her, and equally clear to every gossip within sight. In the quieter corners of the castle, courtship might unfold through music. A lute song drifting through a half-open window could be a declaration, or a tease meant to spark curiosity. If the lady leans out to listen, the musician has won the first round of a very slow game. But not all signals are welcomed. Sometimes a ribbon is returned, folded neatly with a sprig of rue, symbol of regret. Sometimes a message is intercepted and read out at supper, turning a romance into a cautionary tale. Your friend, a scribe who claims to know all the tricks, warns you that the most dangerous signal is the one you imagine. If you think someone's eyes lingered, you might build an entire romance in your head before they've even learned your name. Yet even he admits that small risks can pay off. A baker's apprentice once delivered a pie to the wrong door on purpose, so he could see the girl who lived there. She laughed when she realized, and he left with both an empty basket and a promise to return. In the tavern, the rules loosen. Here, a shared cup of ale or a seat near the fire might be all the signal you need. But even then, there's a dance to it, an unspoken agreement to meet eyes only when others are laughing or distracted. On market days, the signals multiply. A merchant might offer a plum to a passing woman, choosing the ripest one in the basket without saying a word. A shepherd might pause to adjust his cloak in the path of someone he hopes to see. Every gesture is a gamble, and every gamble is a story in the making. Still, the risk is the thrill. One shared glance over a jug of ale might mean nothing, or it might become the story you tell for the rest of your life. Marriage markets and family bargains. If love is a maze, marriage in the Middle Ages is the market at the centre. Crowded, loud, and ruled by whoever has the most bargaining chips. For peasants, the bargaining chips are usually goats, grain, or the promise of a healthy pair of hands to work the fields. A family might arrange a match because two plots of land meet at the same hedgerow. Love is optional, though everyone agrees it's a nice bonus if it happens. For nobles, the stakes are higher and the chips are castles, titles, and political alliances. A marriage contract between two families can secure peace, extend influence, or quietly swallow up a rival's territory. These unions are less about romance and more about chess, every move designed to secure the family's position for the next generation. Negotiations can take weeks, sometimes months. The terms cover everything from the dowry, money, land, or valuables given by the bride's family to the morning gift, a present from the groom given after the wedding night. And yes, everyone pretends that part is purely ceremonial. It is discussed in low voices, with polite coughs whenever the implications drift too close to the surface. Markets are literal in some towns. On certain feast days, villages hold gatherings where eligible men and women are paraded. Not unlike livestock before prospective in-laws, families study posture, teeth, and how quickly someone can carry a bucket of water without spilling it. In noble circles, the display is subtler but just as calculated. A banquet might be held where young ladies are seated in prime candlelight, while young men are encouraged to show off in a joust or a falconry contest, or by reciting poetry that may or may not be their own. The church keeps one cautious eye on these arrangements. Technically, a marriage isn't valid without mutual consent, but in practice, a nod at the right moment can be enough to satisfy the priest. Money changes hands quietly. If a bride's family is short on land but flush with coin, they might sweeten the deal with a chest of silver plate. If the groom's family is wealthy but socially climbing, they might accept less money in exchange for the prestige of the bride's name. Some families get creative with their offers. A particularly skilled brewer might throw in a yearly supply of ale. A shepherd might promise 10 lambs over the next 3 springs. In these moments, marriage feels less like a personal union and more like a barter fair with better clothing. Sometimes things go sideways. A bride's dowry might be stolen on the road by bandits. A groom might fail to show up at all, having decided that the tournament in the next county is more pressing. In such cases, contracts can be torn up, reputations damaged, and families left scrambling to repackage the bride or groom for the next round of negotiations. A second attempt might require a larger dowry, or a more forgiving suitor. You watch one such deal unfold in your own village. A miller's daughter, known for her fine bread and sharper wit, is promised to a tanner's son. Both families stand to gain. The tanner gets bread without barter. The miller gets leather at a discount. The entire village seems invested in the match. People are already predicting how many children they will have, and whether the eldest will take after the miller's height or the tanner's stubborn jaw. But at the final meeting, the bride-to-be refuses in front of everyone, declaring she'd rather join a convent than marry a man who smells of hides in summer. Her voice carries across the room like the crack of a whip. The room goes silent. The tanner's family storms out, their boots striking the floor like drumbeats of retreat. The miller sighs and mutters about the price of leather for the rest of the season. There are quieter stories too. A shepherd's daughter might agree to marry a farmer she barely knows, but find herself smiling at him over a shared meal a month later. A noblewoman might meet her match at a banquet and realize, against all odds, that she actually enjoys his company. The truth is, marriage is as much an economic arrangement as it is a personal one. If love grows afterward, that's good fortune. If it doesn't, well, there's always the hope that one's children might fare better, and in the marketplace of matrimony the bargaining never truly ends. It just shifts from dowries and titles to the quiet negotiations of daily life. Who tends the hearth, who mends the roof, and who decides where the next feast day will be spent. Weddings, feast, faith, and folklore. You've been to weddings before, but nothing like this. Here, the air itself feels ceremonial. In the village, the whole settlement is already awake, baking bread, roasting meats, and stringing garlands of whatever flowers can be spared from the fields. Even the blacksmith has washed his hands, a rare enough event to mark the calendar. For peasants, the church bells do most of the announcing. The sound carries over fields and fences, calling in family, neighbours, and anyone else who can smell the food from a mile away. A medieval wedding is not just about the couple, it's about binding two families, securing land, and if you're lucky, gaining access to that uncle's legendary ale recipe. The bride arrives in her best gown, which for peasants might simply mean the one without patches. Sometimes she wears a crown of flowers, other times a veil borrowed from an older sister, slightly yellowed but still serviceable. The groom, if he's feeling ambitious, will have found a belt or a tunic in a brighter colour, but if he's practical, he's worn something easy to move in, knowing there's a night of dancing and possibly wrestling drunk cousins ahead. The ceremony itself is brief but binding. A priest intones the Latin phrases "hands are joined," rings if they can be afforded, or sometimes just a knot tied in a ribbon around their wrists. This knot, literally tying the knot, is a symbolic and physical moment, one the whole crowd leans in to watch. For nobles, things escalate. Weddings are political theatre. The bride's gown may be stitched with imported silks, trimmed with fur, or embroidered with gold thread to advertise her family's wealth. The church is filled with banners, heraldry, and the warm glow of candles that cost more than a peasant earns in a season. Musicians line the aisle, ready to play at both the solemn vows and the joyous recessional. In noble circles, guests are seated according to status, a subtle reminder of where everyone stands in the grand hierarchy. At the very front, parents and lords. In the back, distant cousins and people who might be owed money but aren't important enough to seat near the wine. After the vows, it's time for the feast, and this is where the line between peasants and nobles becomes a canyon. A peasant feast might feature bread, cheese, salted pork, and stewed vegetables. The ale flows, the music is fast, and dancing begins almost immediately. Shoes are optional, especially after the first hour. A noble feast, on the other hand, could stretch for hours. Spit-roasted swans, elaborate pies that release live birds when cut open, sugared almonds, imported wines, the kind of display meant to impress both allies and rivals. Entertainment is layered in, minstrels performing songs written for the occasion, jesters tumbling between courses, and poets reciting verses so dense in metaphor they might as well be riddles. Then comes the dancing, and here traditions overlap. Whether noble or peasant, the circle dances line steps, and paired reels are ways for the community to join in, for laughter to dissolve any lingering tension. At some point, there's the bedding ceremony, a practice now baffling and awkward to modern minds. The couple is escorted to their chamber with great fanfare, often with jokes, teasing, and in some cases, the entire wedding party crammed in to witness them get into bed. Privacy, in medieval times, is a luxury rarely afforded, even on your wedding night. And yet, under the weight of custom, under the eyes of family, under the garlands and candlelight, There's also something tender here, a union mark not just in ink or in law, but in the memory of everyone who shared the day. By the time the last cup is drained, the candles are low, and the music fades to a hum, the couple is bound, not just to each other, but to the woven fabric of their village or their court. The wedding may be over, but its echoes will carry into every harvest, every feast, every whispered story told by the fire. After the wedding, life as a married couple. The feast is over, the ale has been drained, and the guests have either stumbled home or collapsed in corners they'll regret in the morning. The marriage, however, has only just begun. In the Middle Ages, the wedding day was just the prologue. The real story started once the songs faded and the couple stepped into their shared life. For a peasant couple, that might mean waking up the next day to the same chores as any other morning. The rooster doesn't care that vows were spoken. Cows still need milking, water still needs carrying, and the fire still needs coaxing into life. The bride might now move into her husband's family home, sharing a bed not just with her new husband, but sometimes with younger siblings, or even an elderly grandparent, all under one wool blanket. Privacy is not a luxury peasants can afford. The household economy depends on teamwork. She might weave cloth while he tends the fields, or they might both work side by side planting and harvesting. In good years, there might be enough left over to sell at market. In bad years, they survive on broth and faith. Love, if it comes, grows from shared labour, the kind of affection that builds when you've spent hours together pulling a plough or mending a leaking roof in the rain. For nobles, the first morning of marriage could be vastly different, but not necessarily more romantic. Their bedchamber is grander, with carved wooden posts, fine linens, and perhaps a carved chest filled with gifts. Yet it's rarely a private sanctuary. Servants might bustle in to deliver breakfast or to witness the symbolic morning gift. A formal token the husband presents to his wife, often land, jewels, or a promise of income. The gesture is less about sentiment and more about securing her legal and financial position. Noble marriages are often political alliances, sealed to unite families, secure land, or strengthen claims. The couple may have spoken more words at the altar than in all the months before. Affection, if it blooms, has to navigate the thorns of court intrigue and family expectations. The young bride might find herself surrounded by strangers, adjusting to new customs, and carefully avoiding political missteps that could damage her family's standing. Regardless of class, the marriage bed was more than a piece of furniture. It was the centre of household life. In noble circles, bedding ceremonies were sometimes public events, with witnesses present to ensure the marriage was consummated. Among peasants, the proof might be more practical. If a baby arrived within the year, no one asked questions. Daily married life meant merging habits, roles, and, occasionally, tempers. Disputes could arise over everything from how to salt the winter meat, to which field to plant in barley. In peasant villages, disagreements were often aired in full view of neighbours, who might take sides or try to mediate. In noble households, conflicts could ripple outward into dangerous political territory if one spouse offended the other's powerful relatives. Religious life shaped marriage deeply. Attendance at Mass, confession and observance of feast days were shared duties, and the church's influence extended into the home. Peasants might mark anniversaries with a simple blessing from the parish priest, while nobles might sponsor elaborate masses or commission paintings to honour their union. Marriage also came with unspoken contracts. A wife was expected to manage the household efficiently, whether that meant brewing ale, spinning wool, or overseeing servants. A husband was expected to provide protection and stability from bandits, from famine, from financial ruin. Failure on either side could lead to public shame. And then there were the quieter moments, those that history rarely records. The peasant husband carving a small wooden comb for his wife during the winter months. The noble couple exchanging a joke behind closed doors, away from the watchful eyes of the court. These small acts of kindness could anchor a marriage far more firmly than the grand vows ever did. For all the formality and structure, the truth was that medieval marriage was a daily negotiation. Part duty, part partnership, part survival strategy. Love could thrive in it, but it was never guaranteed. As the years passed, children might arrive, fortunes might change, and the bond between two people would be tested by time, toil, and the turning of seasons. Because in the Middle Ages, as now, a wedding was just a day. A marriage was everything that followed. Love, loss, and legacy. The years turn like the great wooden wheel of a watermill, slow, steady, and unstoppable. When you look back, you can hardly remember the moment you stopped being newlyweds and simply became a part of each other's days. Children arrive one by one, their cries filling the space between chores and meals. For peasants, every child is both a blessing and an extra pair of hands in the making. From the moment they can walk, they help fetch water, scare crows from fields, or mind younger siblings. Life is hard, but the sight of a child laughing in the mud can make the coldest morning feel warm. For nobles, heirs are currency, proof that the marriage has fulfilled its most important duty. A healthy son means the family line continues, estates remain secure, and political alliances hold firm. Daughters are valuable too, each one a future match that could strengthen ties or bring new wealth. But with every pregnancy, the shadow of danger lingers. Childbirth is risky in any household, and many families, rich or poor, light candles and whisper prayers when the time comes. Love in the Middle Ages is not immune to loss. Plague, famine, and war can reach any door. A bad harvest can starve a village. A political feud can end a nobleman's life on the battlefield. The great equalizer is grief. It comes to castles and cottages alike, and it carves its mark deep. In peasant homes, mourning is communal. Neighbours help dig graves, bring food, and share stories by the hearth. Life must go on, and often it does the very next day, because animals need feeding and the fields won't wait. In noble households, mourning can be a spectacle, black garments, masses for the dead, public displays of sorrow. But behind the pageantry, the ache is the same. A long marriage can also be a quiet refuge. After years together, you learn each other's rhythms like the verses of a favourite hymn. You can tell when your spouse is tired just by the way they set down a cup. You know their laugh from across a crowded feast. For peasants, these small comforts soften the endless work. For nobles, they are a rare bit of truth in a life otherwise filled with politics and performance. As age creeps in, the roles often reverse. A husband who once carried heavy loads may lean on his wife's steady arm. A noblewoman who once relied on her husband's influence might now speak in his stead at court. And when one goes before the other, which is almost inevitable, the surviving spouse carries not just memories, but the practical knowledge of how to keep the household running alone. Legacy in the Middle Ages is more than land titles or wealth. For peasants, it's the field you kept fertile so your children wouldn't starve. It's the recipes, songs, and skills passed down through generations. It's the repaired plough your grandson still uses. For nobles, legacy is castles, charters, and family crests. But it's also the whispered stories told about you long after you're gone. Did you rule with kindness? Did you defend your people? Did you protect your children's inheritance? Both peasants and nobles understand that their lives are threads in a much larger tapestry, one they will never see completed. The church promises that love and virtue will be rewarded in the next life, but in this one, your legacy is in the hands of those who survive you. If you are lucky, your children remember not only what you owned, but who you were. They remember your voice, sharp in warning, soft in comfort. They remember the stories you told by firelight. They remember that you laughed when the bread burned and danced at a feast when the fiddler played your song. Because in the end, medieval marriage is not just about surviving together. It's about building something, a home, a family, a memory that will stand in some form long after you're gone. The church bells will toll for someone else, the seasons will keep turning, and the world will forget many names. But for the few who still speak yours, the story will be more than dates and deeds. It will be the story of love lived in a time when nothing was certain, and perhaps that's why it mattered so much.